Nope, it's not what I want. Okay, here we go. This is the wrong page again. I'll have to get the next one. Next one, third time to say is a charm. I just lost them all. This is ridiculous. Here we go. You have this is page 244. 244. You have, these are Yaakov and Leah obviously are married. They have a daughter, Dinah. They're not married anymore. Leah is now married to Chetzron. They have a daughter, Yocheved. So Yocheved and Dinah have a maternal mother, right? Chetzron has a Sarah from Keturah. So Sarah and Yocheved are related to each other. Sarah and Dinah are not related to each other at all, right? Rivka is the product of Besul and Keturah. Rivka is a sister, has the same mother as Sarah. Malka is the daughter of Besul and Chana. Malka and Rivka are sisters, but not related to Sarah. So guys, look at it. 1, 3, and 5 are not related. 1, 3, and 5 are not related at all. Okay? Now, let's say Reuven goes ahead and marries Malka. So he's Asur on Rivka because they have the same father, right? Right? He can't marry her. He could marry her because Sarah is not related to Milka at all. And certainly he can marry Yocheved. Okay. So now, let's say the report comes that Malka is dead. Now Reuven marries Rivka. So that would ask Sarah to Reuven because these are sisters, right? Good. Let's say the report comes now. Let's say the report comes now that Rivka is dead. So that would allow him to marry Sarah, right? That would allow him to marry Sarah. Okay, now the next picture, which of course I erased already. The next picture, which I erased already, which I cut off, and there it's not there anymore. Okay, so you get the drift. So here's basically what's going to happen. It's all going to be false, and they're all alive. So as a result, if that's the truth, then since he's married, so the first, the one he would be permitted to live with Malka, he permitted to marry Sarah and Dinah. In other words, he'd be able to go 1, 3, and 5. The 3 odds would be permitted, and the 2 evens would be not permitted. However, in fact, if Milka does die, then that would permit Rivka to him. And if you marry Rivka, that would ask us, then you'd have the evens permitted. So let's see it inside and make a little more sense. Amrulai, Mesa Ishtecha, right? They say that your wife died. So Milka died.
Where are we starting from?
On Sadik Vav. We're in Sadik Vav Amid Aleph. Sadik Vav Amid Aleph. So Amrulai, Mesa Ishtecha. He said your wife died. So Milka died. V'nasle Achaisa. And then he went ahead and he married the sister. He married in the picture, he married Rivka, right? He married the paternal. Mesa, they heard that this one dies. And now he marries the maternal sister. Mesa, she dies, or he's told he dies. Mesa, so he married 3 women. They're all alive. So Mutter B'Rishaina, he'd be permitted the first one. The second one would be Achasisha, guys. The second one would be Asatem Achasisha. Ubishlishis, he'd be permitted because 1 and 3 are not related at all. 4 would be Asa because the Kedusha is not Toifis because 4 is the sister of 3. But Chamishis would be permitted 5 because 5 is not related to to 3. So 1, 3, and 5 permitted, 2 and 4 are out. Upoiteris Sarasehem, and they would pater their tsaras. The tsaras over here are in fact the two sisters that are not really tsaras because the kedusha is not toifus. But in other words, there would be no din of yibum there. V'asa b'shlio b'revius, and v'asa sister number 2 because he married to 1, and sister number 4 because he married to 3. Ve'ein bias achas men pateres tzarasa. If you go ahead and he would die, and a brother would go ahead and do yibum to 2 and 4, it wouldn't pater 1, 3, or 5 because in fact they're not. He wasn't married to 2 and 4. Let's say number 1 dies. So listen now, guys, as soon as number 1 dies, number 2 becomes permitted. And then we shift. So then 3 would be not permitted, 4 would be permitted, and 5 would not be permitted. So now the 2 evens would be permitted. So Mesa Rishoina, then Muta Bishneir Brevius, then he'd be permitted with 2 and 4, and not 3 and 5. Upoiter Sarasayim, Vyasa Bishlishas B'chamishas, and Vyasa 3 and 5. Because again, the kedusha wasn't typhus. Okay, that's the case in the Mishnah. That's all you have to know. Now the Gemara gets a little intricate. Bentisha shana v'yom echad. We know bentisha shana v'yom echad. A 9 year and a day is a cotton. A 9 year day is a cotton. However, the Chacham said his bia is a bia. His bia is a bia. If he would have relations with let's say an erva, it would kill the erva. He be asa because he's a cotton. But his bia does haste the bia to go ahead and be mechayiv misa. It's in other words, if she was with an erva, somebody he's not supposed to be with, if he was a gadol, that bia 9 would go ahead and kill the woman. That's the halacha. So now, this Chacham made this takana. Now he's 9 on a day, and so now we know that falling in front of him is his brother dies, and let's say there's 2 brothers. There's 3 brothers. One's Reuven's married. Reuven's a gadol. Then there's Shimon, and then there's Levi is a cotton. Levi's 9 on a day. So Reuven dies. Now Levi, who's 9 on a day, goes ahead, and he would go ahead and do bia to who? To Reuven's wife. That would ask him on Shimon, right? No, that's it. There's no the dinner. There would be no din of what for Shimon to go ahead. He would passel. Now, even though he's not kainaha because he's not a kinyan gomer. If you remember, the kinyan of a cotton is like a mimer. Mimer is not kaina kinyan gomer. However, who paisal al yidei achen, he would passel the other brothers. The other brothers would not be able to do yibum. That's what his bia accomplishes. It takes Shimon out of the ballpark. Levi, the 9-day-old, would take Shimon the out of the ballpark. Conversely, if Shimon goes ahead and does something, that would go ahead and take him out of the book. Even after his bia, guys, even if after his bia, since his bia is only like a mimer, if Shimon would go ahead and be boil her, or even give her a get, or even do a chalitza, or even do a mimer, that would passel on the 9 and 0, the Levi. Elahu paisel tchila, he can only passel tchila, the achen paisel tchila b'soif. He would have the capacity to go ahead and passel only if he does it initially. He's the first one to act. Masha'en Kain, the other brothers can passel even after him. They can passel not only before him, but besoif, even after. If he would do something, they could go ahead. Let's say if he would do a bia and they wouldn't do anything, so eventually she would be his wife. However, if they do something after that act, it would passel him, even after his act. That's called besoif. But chila means initially, besoif means after his initial act. Ketzad, what's the case? Bentisha shana v'yom echad, sheba al yevimtai. Levi has relations with what? He has relations with Reuven's widow. Pasal al yedei achin, it would pasal Shimon. Bo'ola achin, however, Shimon comes along, v'asa b'maimer, and would do maimer, or nasle get, or chaltzai, or does chalitza, poison al yadai, it would pasal what? The bia of Levi. It would passel be of Levi because again, it's a mimer. It's not koine kinyan gomer. So it would passel. We paskin yesh mimer achamimer. The second mimer goes ahead and if it does something. That's the din of 9-year-olds. We're going to spend a blot on 9-year-olds. So the first case in the Mishnah is 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. We're going to the Gemara spends very little time on it. Okay, because we really did this on Daf Nun Vav. We did it much earlier in the Masechta. Atukulu lav la'achamisas rishoininu. In the middle of the Mishnah, it said v'imba'u al shniya, meaning if the first one died, in other words, he was printed to 1, 3, and 5. But if the first one dies, then he marries 2, because 2 now is not, it's not his wife, it's not his wife's sister anymore. It's not achasishtoi. Says that why Fred the Gemara Kasha, the first case also was when the first one died, right? When one, why weren't you permitted to 2, 3? You know, everything depends upon what? The death of the first one. So it says the Gemara, Atukul la bechad rishayna ninu. Amrav sheishes la'acham yisas rishayna vaday. No. Until then, it was hypothetically, where Adis said the first one died, and then he married the second one, right? And then said the second one died and married the third one. That wasn't a vaday. This case where he's mutter in the second one is where the Rishayna vaday dies. You know for sure. That's the difference between this middle case and the hypothetical first cases, which we said died, but in reality it wasn't death. Okay, that's the end of the 13524. There's nothing more. Now we go back to the case of Ben Tisha Shana V'Yamechad. Okay, we said that Abiyah in the beginning, he could passel on the other brothers. Levi can passel Shimon. Let's keep it just very easy. Reuben, Shimon, Levi. Reuben's dead. Levi is the 9-year-old and Shimon is the brother. Good, the gadol. So we said if he does Abiyah, it passes Shimon. Says the Gemara. Ben Tisha Shana V'Yamechad Tchila passel. If he does it before Shimon, it will passel Shimon. B'soif, if he does it after Shimon, like passel, it would not stop Shimon. So whatever he does afterwards would not passel. Shimon would be able to miyabing Reuven's widow. Fred the Gemara, Vatani Reb Zvid, Reb Oishia, Ha'oisa Maimer b'Yevimtoi. If someone does Maimer with the brother, v'achkach ba'achiv shahoya ben teshan v'yamechad aleha pasla. So if he would do a Maimer, Shimon would do a Maimer. Comes along Levi afterwards and what and he would live with her, he would have relations with her, it would passel. In other words, our Mishnah says that the first guy, if Levi can only passel in the beginning, not afterwards. Here, Rabbi Zvid is saying no, that if Shimon gave Maimer and Levi does a biyah, it would passel, right? If Levi would do a biyah, it would passel. You told me Levi can't do anything afterwards. That's pshat, guys. One more time. The Mishnah says that Shimon can do before and afterwards. Levi can only do before. Fred the Gemara, Rabbi Zvit says the following: if Shimon gives a maimer and Levi then afterwards does a biyah, it would passel. So you see, Levi in the end, b'soif does do something. Kasha, Amri, they said biyah passel afilu b'soif. When we said that Levi can't passel the 9 a day, or Levi can't passel, that's only if he does maimer or a chalitz or a get, but not a biyah. A biyah taka would passel b'soif. Biyah passel afilu b'soif. Maimer tchila passel b'soif loy passel. Biyah afilu b'soif passel. Okay, so in other words, this is we're amending the Mishnah. When the Mishnah said that the 9-year-old, that Levi, the 9-year-old, cannot passel b'soif, he meant only if you give maimer or a get or a chalitza, but not if you do a biyah. A biyah inachanami would be. So we're giving a more identificational to that nekuda. Fred the Gemara, ubiyah afilu b'soif passel. How can you tell me a biyah passels? Vakitani. The Mishnah learned, Elashu paisel techila, he can passel techila, the 9-year-old can passel initially, the hain techila b'soif, and they can passel in the beginning and the end. Ketzad, how is that? Ben tisha shana v'yamechad, sheba al yevimtoi. So it gives a case of biyah, guys. It's giving a case of biyah, and it's saying that what? That the 9-year-old cannot passel. You're telling me, Reb Zafir, there's a difference between biyah and maimer and get and the other things. But then the case of the Mishnah is where he does do a biyah, and you're saying that's only in the beginning and not in the end. So how can you tell me a biyah passels in the end? Clearly, you see from the case of the Mishnah that a biyah does not passel of a 9-year-old after the brother's act. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah is missing some words. The Suri Mechsero, missing words. Let's redo the Mishnah. Ben Tisha Shana v'Yamechad, who paisel techila, the hain paisel techila. Both him and them could passel initially. When do we say that the 9-year-old can only passel betchila? That's b'maimer. That's what if he does a maimer b'soif. Aval biyah, if he does a biyah, paiseles afila b'soif, then the biyah would passel even in the end. So initially, the Mishnah, we thought that what? The 9-year-old could never passel b'soif. And now we're amending it. No, that's only if he gives a mimer, it doesn't passel. But einachinami, if you would do a bia in the end, it would passel on the brother. So if Shimon gave a mimer to Reuven's widow and comes along Levi and gives a mimer, nope, Shimon's still in business. Comes along Levi and does yibum, does a bia to Reuven's widow, then Shimon's out as well. So in other words, the 9-year-old has the capacity to b'soif if he does a bia, not a mimer. Ketzad, and here's the example. He passes the brother. Good. Now, it's mashma that guys that he does have a mimer. Good. It's mashma from here. We said if he does a mimer afterwards, it doesn't work. Correct? Does he have a mimer to passel the brothers? For Tanya, he has a capacity to passel the brothers with what? With one way. And the brothers can passel him, can get him out of the ballpark in 4 ways. Guys, so even before we see the Gemara, right now, we think there's 2 ways to go ahead and passel. 1 with a bia, 2 with a mimer. The mimer working betchila, but not in the end. The bia working both betchila and the end. Right? So now we're saying he can only passel one way. That's only a bia. Mashma is not even a mimer. Says the Gemara. Who posel bia? He can passel. Levi can passel Shimon with a bia, but not a mimer. That's the kasha. They can. There's 4 ways they can stop him from doing yibum. 1, either by being boil. 2, giving a mimer that would get him out of the ballpark. 3, giving a get that kivin shalav yivne kivin shalav yivne, and 4 bechalitza that would get him out of the ballpark. Says the Gemara, bia de pasla, bia that passels. In other words, so guys, here's the kasha. One more time, guys, kasha. You told me that the 9-year-old, the Levi, can go ahead and give a mimer to passel betchila, or bia would passel betchila b'soif. Fred the Gemara, I think he only has one way to passel, a bia, and not a mimer. So how do you explain that? You said he has a mimer. And for the Gemara, here's the teretz. Bia the pasla, bein betchila, bein b'soif. Bia, which has the capacity to passel before Shimon did anything or after the Shimon did something, psikale, therefore we learned one way. Maimar the betchila pasel, Maimar which would passel initially, b'soif, but in the end, lay pasel, lay psikale. Okay, so we have a teretz. Really, when it said the 9-year-old Levi can passel only one way, we're saying the one way he passels works in the beginning and in the end. The brothers can passel 4 ways, works beginning and the end, whether it's a bia, a mimer, a get, or a chalitza, works beginning and end. Why didn't they list that the 9-year-old can passel with a mimer? Because that's only one-sided. The mimer can only passel if it comes before Shimon, but if it would come after Shimon, it wouldn't passel. Therefore, he didn't learn 2 ways, only one way. Over here, this Bryce is listing the 1 and the 4. We're listing the ones that work whether before or after. Since mimer only works before, it's not listed. So Einachinami, that's Pshana Mishnah, very geschmack. The 9-year-old has the capacity to passel before if it's a mimer, and if it's a bia, he can passel a filu not only before, but even after. Guys, we're all good? It's Baruch Hashem. Says the Gemara Vayter. Itmanami, well, as well that he has a mimer. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, yesh le get, he can give a get. Now again, guys, what a get does is that you had a chance to do a yibum chalitza, you didn't. Kivin shalei boina shalei yivna, you're out. That's what a get does. You're out. If you're finished, that's what a get does. It also asks on the kroivim. There would be, achas kushasoy, whatever it is, V'chein amar Rav Tachlifa bar Rav Yomi yesh la maimer. He has maimer. Tanya nami hachi yesh la get v'yesh la maimer. The Remei he has both. Fred the Gemara v'savra Remei yesh la get. Does a Remei hold a 9-year-old can give a get to passel on the brothers? But Tanya asu bias bentisha. We make the bia of a bentisha k'maimer begadol. That's what we said. In other words, the bia is not koine kinyan gomer. It's not a full. It's a maimer. And now, and here's the kasha. Remei oimer. Asu chalitzas bentisha get begadol. We make the we make the chalitza of a 9-year-old like the get of a gadol. Now, if you're telling me he has yesh le get, why do you have to make like the get of a gadol? Make like his own get. Says the Gemara of him, Isa, that he has a get, listening kigitai. Guys, the 9-year-old clearly is a cotton. His bia is not a full-fledged bia; it's only equal to a mimer. His chalitza, his chalitza is not a full-fledged chalitza to free her. It's like a get to passel the brothers, or right, but it's not a full-fledged get like the brothers. Okay, so the question is, if it's a full-fledged, if he has a get, why do you have to say his chalitza is like the get of a gadol? Say his chalitza is like his own get. That's the kasha on Reb Meir. You Reb Meir said he has a get. So why do you go ahead and compare it to the get of a gadol? Say compared to his own get, his chalitza is no better than gitoi, than his own get. So Amar Rav Huna B'Reider of Yeshua Islay v'zuter. He has what? He has a get, but it's not so much. In other words, but it's a little less. And now the Gemara explains. Li Reb Gamliel, according to Reb Gamliel, that a lot of this Gemara is predicated upon Daf Nun. Amar ain't get after get. There's no get after another get, meaning the second get will not go ahead and into effect to passel the kroivim. Hani mili begadol. That's by a gadol, acha gadol. V'koten acha koten. Aval gadol acha koten mahani. Good. So in other words, Reb Gamliel says ain't get acha get. Right. That's only if they're equal. Gadol koten. What happens if what first the koten gives and then a gadol gives? The second gadol would override. So you see that it's less because the second get is a good get. If the Rabbanah yesh get acha get, hani mili begadol. Acha gadol like cotton acha cotton. Aval cotton acha gadol. If a gadol gives a get and then a cotton gives a get, it doesn't work. The cotton and you be permitted to crave him and loy mahani. It doesn't help. Amid base. Ben tisha shanim v'yoy mechad shebo al yevimtoi v'acha kach bo eleha a ben tesh shanim v'yoy mechad. He's 9 years and a day. Shebo al yevimtoi. He lives with his yevama. So in other words, Reuven died. And now Levi does Yibum. Okay, so what's Levi's Yibum equal to? Mimer. Levi, again, Bia ben Tes is like a mimer. It's not Koine Kinyan Gomer. So Reuven dies, and now Levi goes ahead and does Yibum with his widow. Shu ben Tes Shem Yachad. Now comes along Shimon, who also is what? 9 in a day. In other words, at two different times, you have two brothers. One Levi and Shimon, they're both Katanim. What's the halacha? Poisel al yadoi. The second one will passel the first. The second one will passel the first. Why is that? Top Rashi, guys. Again, this is bringing you back to the 5th parak. The Havile Kimaimer Achamaimer. After all, guys, both of these guys are 9 in a day. Their bia is a mimer. We paskin yesh maimer achamaimer. The shneim toifsimba. They both work. The kivin the boy you get mishneim. Now you need to get from both of them. Come besa aleha bekivin shleibana shulayivne. Now, since you need to get, since what? Since you need to get, since you again. Once you need to get, it's since you had a chance to do it and you didn't, you're out of the ballpark. So that's the shot over here. It's like a mimer after mimer, and you need to get. Once you need to get, it's like you had a chance to do it and you didn't. So the second bia of the 9 would passel the first bia of the 9. Reb Shimon says no. Reb Shimon, I'm a lay paisel. Guys, Reb Shimon says mimer acha you do either one, you give the other one chalitza. That's Reb Shimon's shita. Ben teshan v'yamechad sheba al yivimtai. If you've been tesh shanim v'yamechad sheba al yivimtai, you're 9 years you're in a day. You live. So Levi's living with Reuven's widow. V'yachach ba al tzarasa, and then Levi goes ahead. Reuven had another wife, right? He had another wife, and now lives with that one. Poisel al yedei atzmai. He would passel himself. Says Rashi. Let's see Rashi. 3rd line down. Pasla l'rishoina al atzmai. His bia on the tzara would passel him from marrying Reuven's widow. The kolshkein l'shniya certainly would passel him in the tzara. Why? The bias echad hu boine ve'ein boine shnei batim. Again, getting us back to Yevamot, guys. A man does. You don't do yibum to two. Only one. Bias echadu boina. Vein boina shnei batim. Only one and not two. The kivin dein biyasa b'shoina kinyan gomer. Since what? The first one is only a mimer. It's not a full kinyan. Mahanya biya shnia latzricha get. The second one would need a get. Now, once you need a get, you're over on kivin shleibana shelo yivna. The kivin the yav get come kula besa b'lo yivna. It's very logical. If you go back to in Perik Rabbi Gamliel, right? The two concepts that we repeat. By you can't go ahead and do bia twice. You do one, not the other. So if a guy would go ahead and be boil one and then the other, so the other be over an isra on the other one, and this one, that's his wife. That's a regular bia. Mashenkin over here, where he does a bia on the first one, it's only a mimer because he's a cotton. So therefore, the second sar is still in the ballpark. So now when he's boiled the second one, so now it's like two maimarim. Now he can't do two. Now he needs a get for this one or this one. Once you need a get, you're even kivish leibana shelo yivna. So therefore, his bia pasal yadeyatzmoi. Not a brother if a brother would have relations with it, would get him out. So too now he himself is the one getting himself out. And Rav Shimon says no. Rav Shimon says no. Says Rav Shimon, I'm a late paisel. Tanya. Rav Shimon is going to tell you the chachamim why yesh maimer acha maimer. That's really what's happening over here. 9-9, guys. The first case, 9-9, yesh maimer acha maimer, and therefore you need a get, and therefore you have kivish leibana shelo yivna. In bia rishayna bia, if the first bia is a good bia, then bia shnia ain't a bia, guys. Right? If the first bia of the first brother is a bia, Levi's, then Shimon, who's also 9-year-old in a day, is no bia. It's nothing. Because what? Because Levi was kind of completely. Then bia rishayna ain't a bia, then bia shnia nami ain't a bia. If the first guy's no bia, the second guy's also no bia, right? Good. So therefore, the al karchachwat, it works. The first guy, whichever one that works. Now, masnisin loike ben azai. The Mishnah is not like ben azai. The Tanya ben azai yomer yesh maimer acha maimer when b'shnei yevamim b'yevama achas. Ve'ein maimer acha maimer b'shnei yevamos b'yavam echad. But if it's two girls and one man, then not. Guys, look at me. Two men, one woman. We learned this, we see this in the fifth parak. Each one has a shot. So just because this guy goes ahead and does mimer, this guy is still viable. So yesh maimer acha maimer, because they both have shaykhs to this one woman. Two yevamis, one man. One man has one shot. Whichever one he does it to, he does it to. So if he does it to this one, then you can't do it to this one. If he does it to this one, you can't do it to this one. There's only one game in town. Our Mishnah said, even with one person, he's doing it to this and it's Sarah. Yesh maima acha maima. So Menazai can't be the Tana of our Mishnah. Because in our Mishnah, we have one guy doing it to two women. Therefore, Al Karchel can't be our Mishnah. Does that ring a bell? I mean, it's almost 50 blot ago. Believe it or not, it's almost 50 blot ago. But again, it's the concept that's repetitive. Again, remember from our sugya, fellas. Again, yesh maima acha maimer. Why? Because it's not a kind of kinyan gomer, and therefore you need a get. Once you need a get, kivish leibana shelo yivna. Only one bia, not two bias. Why? Because you only be baina bayasecha vein baina shnei batim. Says the Mishnah. Ben tisha shana v'yayim echad sheba al yevimtai. Again, same thing. Levi is living with Reuben's widow. Umeis, and now Levi dies, and Shimon's around. Chayletzes v'lo yibis yabemes. You give chalitza, and you do not go ahead and do yibum. Do you know why? We're going to bring to another thing, guys. When Levi went ahead and did bia, it created like a mimer. Good. So did it take off the zika of Reuven completely? No. The only way to take off the zika of Reuven completely was with a bia or a chalitza, with a yibum or a chalitza. So when Levi is boiled, Reuben's widow, now it's not a kinyan gomer. When Levi dies, in this Reuben's widow, you have two zikas. You have the zika wad from Reuven and the zika from Levi. Shimon has to do chalitza because why? He can't go ahead and take off two zikas. Look at Rashi, guys. Sheyesh Allah zika shnei yevamim. Because on to Shimon is two zikas. Shemaimer zeh, the maimer of what? Of Levi, Lo yatzasa midei zikas nefila rishayna, does not take care of the zika of Ruvain. V'chala aleha zikas nefila shniya, and chal on this Yevama now is Levi's. V'tanam perik arba achin mi shaleh zikas yavam echad v'lo shaleh zikas shnei Yevamim. That only one who has the zika of one and not the zika of two. So again, this is a very good chazara of the concepts that we've discussed previously, albeit quite a long time ago. Nachamo. Because you have two zikas. Now, Nasa Isha, if he marries, not a Yevama, if a 9-year-old marries a woman, umeis, and then the 9-year-old dies, harizu patura, there's no yibum, because he was never married to this 9-year-old. Again, this 9-year-old's bia is not koina kinyan. Right? By a Yevama, where there's a zika, then it could be koina. By a unfettered woman, his bia is not enough to create ishus. Again, it makes a lot of sense. Until now, we've been in the cases, guys, all of Yevama, where the case is of a woman falling who happens to be a zika of Ruvain. Therefore, since you're halfway there with the zika, epis tut epis, something makes like a kinyan. Masha'en kain, where it's unfettered, one's free is free. And now he's been Mekadosh, he's a cotton. He can't be Mekadosh with bia. So therefore, what? As a result, if he dies, this Shimon does not have to, or Ruvain, both who are alive, would not have to do Yibam to his wife. He had now, so Levi lives with Ruvain's wife. He gets married now when it's a gadol. Umes. So now, falling in front of Shimon is who? 2 women. One, Ruvain's widow that had a yibum from Levi, and Levi's full-fledged Yevama because he was married to her when she was a Gedalah, when he was a Gadol. Guys, good? 2 women, one based upon a bia of a 9-year-old, and one a full-fledged, regular, normal case of Yibum, of a Gadol. Umes, Levi dies, falling in front of Shimon as 2 women. If Levi had not had relations with Ruvain's widow when he was a gadol, the first one gets chalitza and no bia. You know why? Because you have the zika of 2 Yevamim. You never took off Ruvain's because he had the bia of a 9-year-old. You never took off Ruvain's. You had the bia of a 9-year-old. So falling in front of Shimon is 2 zikas. Why did we just say? Zika achas v'lo shnei, now not 2. So that's out. Vashniya, and the second one, either one, she's a regular case of Yibum. Very geschmack, yeah? It all fits. Rabbi Shimon Aimer, miyabim leis sheyirtza, again, Rabbi Shimon Lishitasa, he doesn't hold it a zika thing with the 2. He says, whichever one you want, for chaylis l'shniya, give chalitza to the other one. Echad shu ben teshan v'yam echad, ve'echad shu ben esrim shaloi hevi shtei sares. There's no difference in all the halachas we mentioned between a 9-year-old or a 20-year-old who didn't bring shtei sares. He would still be considered a cotton. If he didn't bring 2 sares by the age of 20, he'd still be considered a cotton. Okay, so now says the Gemara. Amar Rava says Rava. Had Amar Rabbanan, the Rabbanan said, Zika shnei Yevamim michlatz cholza yivumela biyabma, that if you have the zika of 2 Yevamim, like in our case, where you had the 9-year-old with Ruvain's widow, right? Loi tema, don't say that it's asav to do yibam heicha the ikat tzara only when there's a tzara. The ikal lemigsa mishum tzara. Guys, here's the problem. If you hold the zika shnei Yevamim really is not a deraisa dikadin. If you hold it's you know what, there's a reason. What am I worried about? If we let you do yibum to 1, you go ahead and do yibum to the tzara as well, and then you'll be baina shtei batim. That's the concern. We had this earlier in Daf Lamed Aleph, guys. On Daf Lamed Aleph, we had this earlier that the concern is if a brother falls with 2 zikas, the reason why you can't marry that one is you may do both, and then you'll be over on 2 bias. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Hada Amar Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said, Zika Shnei Yevamim Michlas Chalza Yivum Miyam. Late time we don't say Heichadik tzara is only with his tzara. You're worried that tzara, that maybe he's going to go ahead and do two bias, and they'll say two Yevamis that fall to Yavam Echad miyabim. The hacha leket tzara. Here there's no tzara. Here's a cotton. Nonetheless, what? You can't go ahead and marry. Over here, there is no tzara, because what? He's the bia of a cotton. And therefore, he's not allowed to able to go ahead and marry. And nonetheless, we're saying, even though he's a cotton, we're saying that what? He can't go ahead, what? And he's also on this one, even went out at tzara. Again, there's if you see the Rashi, but I think I lost it on the screen. Guys, picture 77. Picture 77. Go to picture 77. Go to picture 77. I'm going to try to get this on the page for people who don't have it.
That's page 86.
Page 86. Okay, guys, you should be able to see this. You have three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, married to three women. Reuven now goes ahead and gives Maimer to, Reuven dies, Shimon does Maimer to Chana. So now if Shimon dies, falling in front of Levi are two Zikas, the Zika of Reuven and the Zika of Shimon. So we say that the Tzara, you can't go ahead and do anything there either. We're worried if you let you do Yibum over here, you may do Yibum over here, and they'll say someone who comes from one house, you do Yibum to two. Guys, you got it? In our case, there's no Tzara. So you say the reason is not because that Gezerah. The reason is because it's Asr. The reason the reason over here is it Asr. Did you see that just now, or did you see, guys? Did you see that or not?
Yes.
Oh, you saw the screen. Okay, good. Oh, so that's the sheet over here. That's the sheet over here. So Nachamo. Says Rava one more time. Says Rava. Amar Rava. Hadam Rabbanan that said Zika Shnei Yevam Michas Chaltzi Bim Lemiyama. That Penina, in that case, you weren't able to go ahead and do Yibum, right? Because you had the Ruvain. You had Reuven dying, and then you had the Maimer, right? You had Reuven dying, and then you had Shimon's Maimer, and Shimon died. So you have two Zikas coming in front of Levi. Don't say it's Asa because of the worry that you may go ahead and be miyabbing the Sarah as well and do both. Because over here, the Hahacha by the 9-year-old that lived with his Yevama and then died, Leket Sarah. There's no Sarah because the cotton can't marry a woman. So if this can't marry a woman, there is no other second wife. And nonetheless, and nonetheless, you're doing what? You're doing chlitza, not yibum. Guys, geschmack, good. It's a lot of information. I hope it's good. I hope it's good. Now, says the Mishnah. Okay. It said Nasa Ishu Mace. We said that he went ahead, and what did he do? He married a woman. He got older, he married a woman. We said that the first one you have to give chalitza to because it's two. You have Reuven's Zika and his, and the other woman you could do either one, chalitza or bia. We said if he marries a woman, it doesn't fall to yibum. Why? Because there's nothing there. Tanina lahad Rabbanan, shaita v'katan shenisu umesu, a shaita v'katan that got married and died. Neshasayim peturis min chalitza min yibum. It's not a kedushin. So therefore, it's the same thing over here. It's not a kedushin, you pater from yibum. Okay, we said the next case was ben tisha shanim b'yamechad mishahigdil. If he didn't live with her, then the first one gets chalitza, and the second one that he was a wife, oy chaletz l'misya bemes. Fredumar v'yasu biu ben tes kemaimer begadol. Why don't we do the biu of a tes kemaimer begadol v'titcha tzara meyibum? why don't we view the one, he has two wives over here, right? The first one you're saying that when he was a cotton, you're saying chaletzes, or misya bemes. And the second one, you're saying you can marry her. Good. Why don't we view the first one as a mimer? Guys, if a guy has two wives, you give mimer to one that pushes off the tzara completely. So look at me. In this case, where he had one wife was Yevamot from when he was Tess. And now he has another one that a full-fledged wife that he married when he was a gadol. You're telling me as long as he didn't have relations with her, that she's out of the ballpark. Why don't we view his bia? He's a 9-year-old. His bia is a mimer. What's the halacha if a guy has two wives, a mimer and a tzara? The tzara is out of the ballpark. So why are you telling me you could do yibum chalitza to this one? Why don't we view his bia as a mimer and this one's out? That's the kasha. Freding Mara. V'yasu bias ben tes k'maimer b'gadol v'titchet tzara mi'ibum. Amarav lo yasu bia ben tes k'maimer b'gadol. So you don't do it. We don't make it like a mimer, and therefore you can marry the second one. You can do yibum to the second one. U'shmuel ama asu v'yasu, a double lashon. Listen, Geshmak Ritva, guys. Why the double lashon? A will make his mimer to passel the brother. Our first mission that we began to share with, that the bentes can passel the brother. For us, and certainly will make it a mimer that require you won't be able to do yibum chalitza to the second one. In this case, so in our Mishnah, what's pshat? If that's the case, like Rabbi Yochanan fellas in our Mishnah, you shouldn't be able to marry the second one because of the mimer of the first one. Says the Gemara Tanoim. In fact, it's machlokes Tanoim whether if it's asa the tzara miyibum. It's a machlokes Tanoim whether the tzara is going to be asa from yibum or not. Hach Tana de Arba Achin, the Tana of Arba Achin. That's picture that we just saw, guys. This Tana, the Tana of this case, the Tana of this case of Arba Achim, this Tana, right? Gozer mishum tzara. This guy said, "What are you worried about?" Again, guys, we're worried about Penina. Here's what we're worried about. If you were allowed to do a yibum to here, you may come to do yibum here. So therefore, we said chaletz lo yisya bemes because over here, because we don't want you going and do yibum over here. So that Tana Arba Achin goes on mishum tzara. Vashminim begadol. This case is begadol for who adim bekotten, and the same thing would be cotton. Guys, look. This is exactly our case. Watch, guys. Look at the picture. Look at the picture. Reuven dies. Shimon is giving mimer to Chana. If Shimon was 9 years old in a day and was boil Chana, that would be the same as a mimer, correct? That would be the same as a mimer, yeah? If that's the same as a mimer, and then you tell me Penina is not married, that's not our Mishnah. That's this Mishnah. Our Mishnah is obviously going to hold that it's different over here, that it's asa, that it's asa deraisa to marry her because it has two zikas. The zika of this one and the zika of this one, and therefore you can be permitted to do this one. Guys, look at the picture and focus really well. I just explained the Gemara. I'm explaining it very well. I think so. Listen up. There's two possibilities why you can't marry Penina, right? Chana has got two Chana over here. You see clearly Chana, she has two zikas, Ruvain and Shimon. Since Ruvain only gave Maimer, it's that kind of Kinyan Gomer. Therefore, when he falls to a Levi, there's two zikas. Good. Let's take this picture off the board and just put in the word he is 9 years old. And he was Boilha. His 9-year-old is equal to the money. It's a mimer. So now, there's two possibilities why you shouldn't be able to marry Chana. Two possibilities. One is because I'm worried if you go Penina. If you go ahead and do Bia to Penina to Chana, you may come to do Bia to Penina. And we were you're going to buy a secha b'leishtei bonim. But really Levi could have married Chana. So Shimon could have married Levi, 9-year-old's kid. Or no, maybe the reason why you can marry Chana, Penina, is because Chana is totally out of the ballpark. You know why? Because she has two zikas, and the din of two zikas is their Isa. So since it's their Isa, we're not goyza because it's Sarah. It's asa deraisa, and Mamela he could marry Chana. He could marry Penina. That's our Gemara. Look at the picture. Levi, Shimon is a 9-year-old. He had relations with Chana. That makes Chana into what? Like he gave a mimer. He dies lit Shimon. Now Shimon on Chana is 2 zikas, Ruvain and Shimon. Mela deraisa, Chana's out of the ballpark. Therefore, since Shimon had married a woman when he was a Gedola, Penina, therefore you're able to go ahead and do Yibam. And that's Pshat in the Sugya. It's a Machlokes Mishnayos between how that over there, it's a Gezerah because of the Tzara, and our Gemara where we're not worried about the Tzara at all. Let's see it inside. Rabbi Yochanan Asu Vasu V'Yasu says Gemara Tanai. It's Machlas Tanayim. Hach Tana de Arba Achim. The Tana of the picture that I just showed you in Arba Achim. Gazam Mishum Tzara. The reason you can't marry is you can't do anything to Chana. Yibim to Chana is because you may come to do Yibim to Penina. Vashminim begadol v'uadim bekotten who would be the same thing if it wasn't Shimon but it was a 9-year-old. V'hayda amar gadol mishum de begadol lekoi because we're speaking about gadolim. V'hay Tana dehacha, the Tana over here in Asugya Sfirle Asu. Right, you could go ahead and do you can do yibam to the tzara, but like gazim mishum tzara. You know why? Because it's asa deraisa by 2 to marry Chana. Since it's asa deraisa to marry Chana, that would permit the tzara to permit the tzara. Vashmina bekotten vuadim begadol, v'haydam bekotten the bekotten koi. Okay, that's the sugya. We're going to do to the end of the parak. It's not difficult. Also, Rebbe Lazar, he said over the sugya in the base medrash. The B of a cotton is like a maimer begadol. He didn't say the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Shama Rabbi Yochanan in Ikbit, he was makbid that he didn't say the b'shem Amrei. Oil gabe Ravami Ravasi. Ravami Ravasi came to go ahead and be Matthias Rabbi Yochanan who was angry. Amrei, so they told Rabbi Yochanan, like Chaya Hamaisa Beis HaKnesset Shel Tveria. Was this not the Maisa in the Beis HaKnesset Tveria? B'nagar sheyesh b'roishay glustara, a peg that had on top of it, it had a knob that you're able to go ahead and cut onions and garlic. So the shaila is an Indian Shabbos. Does it have a din kli and it's not muktzah, or it is not a kli and it is muktzah? And there's a big machlokes between Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yossi, and their argument and their anger at Shekor Sefer Torah b'Chamasan, they were so angry at each other, they ripped up a Sefer Torah. Sefer the second Elema Nikru Sefer Torah b'Chamasan. They were each one pulling the Sefer Torah to prove their point, and as a result, it ripped. So Rav Ami and Rav Asi were going ahead and showing Rabbi Yochanan that, you know what, look what anger could do. So don't be angry at Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, Amar Tamiyani Lo Yiyah Beis Knesset Zuah. The place they were fighting must have been a hassle of avoid Zara that such a thing can happen. And so it was. So Hada Ikbet Fei, Rabbi Yochanan got even angrier. Amar Chavrusa Nami. You're telling me like from Ravami, Ravasi, these are Chavrusas, they were angry at each other. This is my Talmud, Rebbe Lazar, you know. So Oil Gabe Rav Yaakov Aridi came to me Matthias Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei, Kashat Tziva Shemes Moshe Avdoi, Kain Tziva Moshe es Yeshua. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Mitzvah Moshe, so too Moshe was Mitzvah Yeshua. The Chain Asa Yeshua, L'chasa Davim Mikol Hashat Tziva Shemes Moshe. He did not go ahead and leave out anything that Moshe said. V'chi al kol Dav Shama Yeshua, Hayoim Alehem Kafam Ali Moshe. You think everything he said, did he go ahead and said, this is what Moshe told me? Ella Yeshua Yoshev v'Dairish. Yeshua was sitting and darshaning, stam. And everyone knew it was the Torah of Moshe. So after Rabbi Lazar, even Rabbi Lazar ben Padus Yitalmid, Hamidcha Yoshev v'Dairish, stam. They know it's your Torah, so it's unnecessary to say. So that's a Rabbi Yaakov Aridi was what Matthias the great Rabbi Yochanan. If they ma'yatam yoidim lefayis kibin idi chaverenu. So Rabbi Yochanan turned to Ravami and Ravasi said, "How come you don't know to be Matthias to appease like your chaver Rabbi Yaakov Avidi?" So he was appeased. Rabbi Yochanan, my time a couple kula. Hi, why is Rabbi Yochanan so makbid? Dam Rav Yehuda Amarav, my dechsiv. It says, "Agura b'halecha olamim." I will live in your tent in worlds. Can a person live in 2 worlds? Elo Amadavid, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, he wrote saying Yomru Dava Shmua Mipi, Ba'al Mazeh. I should be Zoicha, they should say something in my name in this world. Dama Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Kol Talmud Chacham Shaimim Dava Shmua Mipi, Ba'al Mazeh, Svaisav Doiv Vais Bakeva. His lips move in the grave. Look at the Taisus on the Amid Beis, guys. The last Taisus. Agur ba'alacha ilamim, keshinish masai b'yeshiva shamayla. When a person's neshama is in the yeshiva shamayla, sivsoisef noyes b'kever. His lips are moving in the kever. Ki'ilu medaberes, and as we're speaking, nimsa shebeshah achas dor b'shnei alamim. So at that time, he's mamish like living in two worlds. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan was makbid. He wanted to say b'shem maimrei that he should be living in both worlds. Anyway, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Zira, Vitem Shimon Nazir Mikro. What's the pasuk? It says, the pasuk says, "V'chikeich kiyayin hatoiv." Your palate is like good wine. Hoylech ledoidi lemesharim doivev sifse yishenim. The slips of the yishenim, those who are asleep, are moving. Right? Kikoyme shel anavim. Like anavim in a heating vat. They put the grapes on top of each other and they would lie and they heat up each other. If you put your finger on it, immediately it begins to bob up and down. So the same voice. Okay, we said Echad ben Tisha Shanim. The Echad is like a 20-year-old. Until 20, a person, 20-year-old is still a cotton. Says the Gemara, Minu ben Esem Shana Shalei Hevi Shtei Sarais. If he was 20 years old and he didn't bring two sarais, Yavi Raya Shu ben Esrim. Go ahead and bring your birth paper, birth certificate, and go ahead, bring your birth certificate. For who has saris? And that's a saris. In other words, a saris is a gadol, guys, right? So you tell me over here at 20 is a cotton. Now you tell me 20 is a saris. It's a stira. Says the girl who's 20 doesn't bring two saris. We had this come earlier. She's an islandess. So you got a kasha. Here it says 20 is a cotton. There you said what? That 20 is not a cotton. Here it says 20 is a gadol. Says when you say at 20 is a saris, it has to be that he had the simanim of a saris that we saw earlier in the Masechta. It's a certain skin and Amar Rabbi, no beard. Amar Rabbi Dekanami Diktani. Who has saris? It says who has saris? Matra, that's the saris. Shmamina. It says how long does a person remain a cotton? If he doesn't have simanim, he doesn't bring stay saris. How much long in his life does he remain a cotton? So Tani Rab Chia adroiv shnaisa till most of his years. So machloek is whether 70 years of a person's life is 70 years. So it's either 35 in a day or 36 years. I saw two opinions in Rishonim. That's the roiv. Either roiv years or roiv days. Ki asul kamei the Rabbi said the following: if he's thin and they bring say saris amalahu zil abriyuso, go gain some weight. V'barian, if he's healthy, meaning he's heavy, amalu zil achushu, go do some weight. The hani simonim zimnin the natri machmas kikshusa. Sometimes you lose the simonim because of thinness. The zimnin natri machmas briyusoi, and sometimes you lose them because of briyas. Hajan lecha yisha rabba, hajan lecha yisha rabba, hajan lecha yisha rabba. Okay, B'ez Hashem. Tomorrow morning we'll be learning in the morning sometime. Hopefully somewhere in the 9, 10 o'clock range. Good to everybody.